originally in Spanish, March 2023. We start from the well-known fact that we are all fragments of the original source. That is the basis. But what is this fragment? It is not something material like a piece of cake. What would the original source be other than a great unified consciousness? It is the conjunction or unification of all the concepts that propitiate the existence of something beyond a total unification of these hypothetical fragments. That is, it is outside of all duality. Everything that is not the original source either cannot exist because it would be part of it, or it would be a subdivision within it. This is the basis for the following. This is why everything else is part of the original source. Nothing is non-source because it is outside of all duality. And if source is pure consciousness, the only thing that separates something from something else is an idea or set of ideas. All the multiverses, galaxies, parallel universes, and other string theories would all be part of the original source. The set of ideas that separates or classifies one thing as something and not the other is the appearance of duality. And that is a soul. The set of ideas of perception that form the boundaries of what is a soul or a point of consciousness. I like to use katra as soul because it takes away any religious charge, defining katra as the set of ideas and perceptions that form a consciousness that transcends material death, the point of attention of a consciousness. So, what is it that forms a soul or katra? It is the attachment to the set of ideas that form the boundaries, or from where to where that soul or katra is defined. And those boundaries, being that a soul or katra will always be a fragment of source, would be what it has experienced in duality, being something that in self-perception is not source. And to achieve such separation in duality, apparent separation, one needs to forget. One needs the veil of forgetting, or simply, if it is removed completely, one would lose all identity of one's own katra and just go back to being the source. Removing the veil of forgetfulness, even to a minor degree, ends up destroying the identity of the self, the ego, of a person, let alone removing it completely. One is only a person, someone defined, as long as one has parameters of measurement that are the lived experiences that form the identity of the ego of the person. Therefore, if we have someone whom we will call Ramon, he is only Ramon because in his perception, his consciousness is identified with the sequence of events that has formed it since he was a child, and what he remembers as conscious and unconscious memory since he was born. But he typically does not remember what or who he was before he was born. So his I, his ego, focuses on the limits between his birth and the day Ramon lives today. That is his ego. And from there, the fear of death and the need for self-preservation is formed. The need to preserve his identity and the prevailing fear of the destruction of the ego through death. But there is a big but there. No one ever completely forgets what they truly are. It is the unconscious itself that is there, seemingly dormant, but which is actually shaping the perception and interpretation of everything a person experiences while alive. And that unconscious is the past memory of previous lives that are shaping who Ramon is today. And even more behind, far behind that unconscious, is the knowledge that one is the original source. All living beings know it. In one way or another, it is there because that is what one is. And it permeates the lives of all beings, of all people. Because, for example, the need to follow some kind of religion is not something negative or of little consciousness. It's just that they were only given that option. But those people who are looking for answers in religion, whatever it is, are looking for the way home. They are on the right track on their own level. It is an imperative need to know oneself as something more than a sack of meat with legs. So, what forms a person is the set of experiences that he had from that point of consciousness and not from another. From his perception of being something limited. That is forming his soul, his katra. But, as I said before, the formation of the identity develops from the past lives as well, and it shapes who the individual is today. That is why I said, speaking of astrology, that the zodiac sign of each person is not defining his personality, but that each person has a specific sign and not another, because his personality, the one he already had, is vibrationally in accordance with being born in that zodiac sign and not in another. Taking into account that each sign and each date represents a value of vibration or frequency. Therefore, the ego is not only formed by the experiences had in the life of a specific person during his current incarnation, but it is the result of his previous incarnations. As much as it pains those who deny reincarnation, there is no way to explain why a 2-year-old child can reproduce on the piano any melody in detail and regardless of its complexity, just by listening to it once, or can play a Paganini piece perfectly from beginning to end, out of nowhere, being that this 2-year-old child was not even born in a musically inclined family. And there are plenty of examples of that. Not to mention my obvious presence as an 11-year-old typing these words instead of learning multiplication tables in elementary school. But that's how we all are. It's just expressed differently or in different ways depending on the intention of each individual, what they choose to live. So then, for whatever reasons that are totally irrelevant since the cause are agreements from beyond, basically a single zygote with a single DNA map multiplies and divides badly, causing two groups of cells to start developing in its mother's womb. Remembering that DNA is a manifestation on the material side of the joint memory of an individual, of all that defines his soul, and that its expression on the material side are the blueprints or the guide for the cells to form a specific pattern and not another. It can be said that the DNA of a person is no more nor less than his or her self-made matter. But now the groups of cells in the mother's womb have exactly the same DNA. So basically they are two clones, equal copies. They are the result of the blueprint of the same soul, but they are two bodies. Even inside the mother's womb, both bodies are giving the same soul two different points of attention, even in the womb, because one is there and the other one is there. And at birth, they will start having more and more different experiences because of life itself, because the other relatives and the society consider them as two persons and not only one. Then, each identical twin will progressively start having different life experiences, and with that, developing as two different people as well. This is where admatic fragmentation has appeared. Before, they were one soul or katra, and now they are two. And each will take its own path during its lifetime and afterwards as well. However, and as attested to by so many, identical twins have an extremely strong connection, and on a telepathic level as well as a strange programming about their tastes and about their own destiny. Because it has been shown that two identical twins, being separated at birth and unaware of each other's existence, have the same tastes, even for the fashion and clothes they wear. They tend to get fat and age the same and pursue very similar careers. This is because from before, from their previous lives, they were one person. So they already have an unconscious map of their life plan that could only have been developed as a consequence of their previous experiences in previous lives. And this is how souls fragment, with a set of ideas of who is who and up to where. What defines them is the experience they have had within their seemingly limited lives. That is memory. However, I should mention that I have used the example of twins because it is the most obvious way to show the audience what I'm talking about. But most of the admatic fragmentation takes place on the spiritual side itself, simply because of the enormous capacity for empathy that everyone has there in high frequency, and the need to experience what the other person has in order to expand their soul even more with the experience. Souls or katras share with each other their experiences when in life, and not even of the lives they have had, simply by sharing with each other their ideas and almost hypothetical concepts about the situations they would like to experience in life. And it is the same in the spirit world, because in the spirit world, the perception of the self, of the ego, is much more expanded. just like the veil of forgetfulness, which, although it still exists, is much less. So, all souls, although they have a strong sense of preservation of self-identity, also take parts of the identities of others, because it expands and nourishes them. That is why the admatic fragmentation happens more on the spiritual side and is connected to the prenatal agreements of each person or group of people, as they represent the life plan they have drawn from before they were born. And with the life plan, one draws the limits to be experienced. And with those limits, one is defining what one will experience. And with that, one will form an identity of self, of the ego, which in turn will represent the appearance of a new point of attention, which is a new soul, admatic fragmentation. I pause here in case anything needs to be clarified before proceeding with admatic unification and beyond.
Thank you. So the fragmentation of souls is not something bad, right? Quite the opposite, because it seems like something bad that the twins on Earth get fragmented.
Ideas only. It is a natural and inevitable process. It is part of the very flow of consciousness. The fact that there is a dominant twin and a recessive or passive twin is only an indication of the same opportunities that each one had since the womb.
Two twins in Temur would be the same Katra?
Yes, and it is the same as on Earth, just with more understanding of what they are.
Thank you, Yazhi. I have a question. From what you said in your last point of fragmentation from the spiritual side, I didn't quite understand what you meant by taking from other identities. I see fragmentation of one soul into 2, 3, etc. as starting from being the same person before, like twins, and then splitting into 2 different paths, but not taking from other identities, because that wasn't you. You just take it as part of you. Taking parts of other identities to nourish yourself, I don't understand how that produces fragmentation or how it connects.
It's just that point of taking ideas and perceptions as your own, coming from other Katras that you have contact with in the spirit world in the afterlife, it's because you talk to each other in a super telepathic way, to call it something. They share experiences, and it is there, as a result of that communication between Katras, that one or the other decides to form their plan for the next life. That is to say that because the Katras in the afterlife are so united, their selves, their egos, tend to merge because of the enormous empathy that is there. Because even though a Katra may not have experienced something in her last life, she does get an expansion of her own because of what the other Katras share with her about that something that she did not experience.
So that is for the merging of the souls. Okay, now I understand. Wow, I didn't know that. But talking about the fragmentation alone, we know, for example, that what also happens is that you can be one person and then you reincarnate but being 2 different people. So how exactly have you fragmented to form in 2 different directions?
That is part of another reaction of the souls or Katras, which is wanting 2 or more things at the same time. Indecision causes that. On the one hand, seeing the advantages and disadvantages of one path, and on the other hand, of the other path.
But this different point of attention occurred when? In the afterlife? I still don't understand it well, sorry.
There are people who are like a nexus point from where others start, because during that life, events happened that caused a soul to have or hold two or more contradictory ideas that it wishes to experience. For example, the Napoleon is definitely one of these nexus people, as is Swaruu 9. Something else happens in the afterlife that I haven't had a chance to explain. What causes you not to understand is most likely because you are still seeing some linearity in the progression of a particular katra's experience. But in the afterlife, there is no time in the same way as it is perceived in life. And that is where what from the material side are called parallel lines or parallel universes cross. In the afterlife, we are in such a high frequency vibration point that it includes multiple timelines. Since, as I have explained before, there is no such thing as timelines or parallel universes, being that they are only interpretations and mechanisms to try to understand an extremely complex whole. And they are only different temporal lines or parallel universes according to the parameters of perception of each person. So, in the afterlife, all of that intersects. And it is there where all the possibilities within the same ideas of a katra are developed as a whole. And because the vibration or frequency is so high, the katras there tend to merge because there is tremendous empathy on those planes of existence, and the specific identities, the framework of perceptions and ideas that define the egos, dissolve. The ego is very strongly generated from the side of a physical incarnation. And on the spiritual side, there is an integration into the collective of souls with similar frequencies, which in itself is a collection of the same soul that has had a similar perception in their incarnations. However, slightly different because of the application there of the parallel universes and timelines that merge into the souls in the afterlife. As they do not exist, they are just ideas of the katras themselves.
Wow. And who exactly do you merge with? With other katras close to you that you feel intimate with? Or they don't have to be?
If they are among others in the afterlife, it is because those others have a very similar frequency, so they are variants of the same katra. And they merge for the same reason that they fragment, but in reverse. Because, as I explained above, you pass the ideas from where to where you want to experience what in your next life. And also because from there, without having to incarnate, you easily define what things you want each katra to be defined by. Hence, a fragmentation is given, but it is only illusory. It is all ideas. Whether they fragment or come together only depends on the ideas that they hold in each moment. Since there, the souls do nothing else but pass an incredible amount of ideas among each other. And all this takes place outside any temporal framework.